And it had its first flight in May of 1972, so we're celebrating the 50th anniversary of its first flight. It kills tanks, it kills bad guys, it's survivable and maintainable. 50 years, 1972, 2022. It's a plane built around a gun. That shows you the size of the gun with the next to a Volkswagen. It's a huge gun. And the Air Force had to build that airplane around that gun and that gun feed mechanism. Data shows here over 19 feet long. A Volkswagen Beetle's only 14 feet long. So really what Tim is flying through in here today was a gun. They put some wings on it and a couple of jet motors and he got here. Guns, airplanes.
That sound is so distinguishable. Literally shakes around. It is amazing.
The gun fires 30mm bullets. It's what we have here in front. And I'm going to pass these around. By the way, we can start these. Please, we'd like to get them back if we could, but pass them around. That's a 30mm, that's a 20mm. There's a 50 caliber to go with it if you can handle them all. My private joke is size matters when it comes to bullets and guns. That 30mm is the projectile on the front of the bullet. This is where the propellant is. This is the warhead that goes out. This thing is 4 times as big as the warhead in the 20mm. 20mm is a gun that most of you who flew. By the way, before I go any further, I need to see how many fact checkers we got. How many other Warthog pilots you got here besides Buzzy, Scream, and me? Colonel Phelan, where are you? They're over here? Okay. We got one other fact checker. Colonel Phelan flew the DM, flew the A-10 down to Davis Mountain a while back. But anyway, the projectile, when it hits a target, because of high muzzle velocity, because a lot of power pushing it, when this projectile hits the target, by data at say 4,000 feet, it's 15 times more powerful in impact than the F-16 or the F-15 gun, which only fires 20mm. That's a couple other pictures of the gun itself. I'm going to let this run for just a little bit. People wonder about the gun. So let me let this go for a little bit and show you how the A-10 gun operates. Barrel rotates. Tim, what do you fire? 4,000 rounds a minute?
Around 3,000.
3,000 rounds a minute if you need it. The object of the pilot flying the gun is to shoot as short a burst as you can, because if you see that 30mm, if you hit anything with that projectile, the thing is done. So you want to fire as short a burst as you can. And I don't know, in short bursts, when you were in combat, how many bullets do you think you fired roughly? About 100?
It completely depends on the target. So anywhere from 100 up to 300 to 400, whenever you're trying to hit tree lines, taking out larger area targets to actually hit people with high explosive incendiary.
Pretty fantastic gun. The gun was made, developed in about 1972-ish. When Buzzy Lynch first started flying the A-10, the guy wasn't even available. Then it came along later and he continued testing with it. Physics, basic physics, and why is it so good? 1 FMV squared. Bullets go, the projectile's going faster, it's got bigger mass. 1 FMV squared means it does a better job when it hits the target. The warheads could be either high explosive incendiaries or what we call the DU round. Depleted uranium, U-239, no real radiation. I mean, I'm still here. I had 4 kids. Tim's got around. He doesn't look like he has any problems with the radiation from it. Depleted uranium really doesn't have any resistance. Probably no more radiation around than what you had in your old wristwatches. Did everybody get a chance to see the airplane outside? If you haven't done it after we get done with this little chat, once you go out there and get your picture taken in front of that gun, put your hand up on the gun. It's kind of the Kodak moment of the A-10 world to get a picture of yourself with the A-10 gun in your hand. as I said, that's the whole reason that the airplane exists. Quick short story about it. The gun was developed, fantastic gun. They said we got to get a pilot on it, so they put a titanium bathtub that Tim sits in on top of the gun, and they had to strap these two ugly wings on the outside, and they said, well, we got to push it, so they strapped two engines on the tail. We wartime pilots affectionately call it double ugly, and it's affectionately known by the fast movers in the Air Force as the only fighter jet that gets bird strikes from the rear. Quick cost comparisons, not going to talk much about it. It's a lot cheaper to fly than the F-16, the F-15, and this is a dated kind of a cost comparison, but it says up here half the cost of flight time of an F-35 flight hour. When Colonel Lynch first started flying the airplane, they selected it and they had a contract price of about $1.5 million. Numbers show now that they say maybe it's up to about, in this cost comparison, they were looking at it about $9 million. I think probably the Air Force accountants might keep it at about $15 million right now. Compare that with the F-35. It's just F-35 is a great airplane, but it's a lot more expensive. The F-35A flown by the Air Force is about $115 million. The F-35B, the vertical takeoff and landing capability, one by the Marine Corps, is almost $300 million. So the A-10 does it a lot better and a lot cheaper. The A-10 was born in the late 1960s. A bunch of guys in the Pentagon thought about the need for an airplane for close air support to help the guys on the ground. They did studies. They put out a request for proposal. 12 companies provided responses to it, and then the Air Force down-selected that to Northrop and Fairchild Republic. Northrop built the A-9, Fairchild Republic built the A-10, and those are the two airplanes that Colonel Lynch and his team flew at Edwards Air Force Base that later resulted in the A-10. You can find some great videos on YouTube if you got the time to want to see some more of that action. Colonel Lynch is here with us today, is my hero. He's my mentor, he's my hero. Buzzy's been suffering from Parkinson for quite a few years, 17 years probably, and is struggling with that right now. But he was the reason I think that the A-10 exists. He led the Joint Test Force. He was the first pilot to fly first U.S. Air Force test pilot to fly the A-10. He ran the evaluation between the A-9, the Northrop airplane, and the A-10, the Fairchild airplane, and resulted in the A-10 being in existence today. Colonel Lynch also, in one of his past incarnations, was the leader, the president of Society of Experimental Test Pilot, the test pilot mafia for all the test pilots in the entire world. So again, a little round of applause for President. This is a picture of the A-9 and Northrop airplane. Let's see, I think the team flew it probably about 300 hours. I think it was a little over 300 hours. They flew this airplane in evaluation. Same amount in the A-10, which they selected. This was late 1972. After that first flight by a Fairchild test pilot in May of 1972, named Sam Nelson, then Buzzy and his team picked up the two prototypes, the A-9 and the A-10, and evaluated it through the fall of 1972. And in January 73, they recommended and the Air Force selected the A-10 as the winner of that evaluation, and it went into a production contract. It became operational in 1977-78. This is a picture of my younger brother a few years ago in front of an A-10. That's the picture you ought to take when you're out by the airplane. That's me. My wife Jan and I were lucky enough to be in the first operational wing of A-10s at Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. And I first started flying it in February 1978. I checked out at Davis Mountain. I don't know, probably Colonel Phelan wasn't there at the time, but another A-10 driver by the name of Dale Tabor checked me out in that airplane. And then I went to Myrtle Beach and got to fly the airplane operationally. If you go anywhere you needed it, and I was lucky enough, this picture is not very good, but I call it the Nina, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria. It's my squadron, half a squadron basically, of 8 airplanes, with a tanker leading it and a C-130 search and rescue airplane behind it pushing us. We were flying across the Pacific Ocean, flew about 5 flights to get there. I remember the longest one was 9.5 hours. The airplane was not as sophisticated as the one that Scream is flying right now. We didn't have an autopilot. The airplane had a kind of a nasty little Dutch roll, so it was pretty tricky, especially when you were trying to use a relief tube. We stopped at Lake Island on the way to Korea. This is a picture of my boys giving a couple of our latecomers. We had a couple of guys got stuck at Hickam with a little problem with the airplane. So we waited at Wake Island and drank San Miguel beer for a couple of days while the other 2 guys caught up to us. And then we proceeded on to Korea. The airplane then later on was flown in various exercises in Cold War, proved itself first in combat in Desert Storm in 1991. During that Desert Storm time period, it was a 43-day war. The A-10 flew about 8,000 sorties in 6 weeks. That's over 200 a day. There were 6 airplanes lost during that time. Unfortunately, 2 pilots were killed, but the airplane proved itself there. You probably all remember the what's called the Road of Death, or whatever it was, north of Baghdad, with the A-10 having wiped out all the armor and tanks and the other armored vehicles that Saddam Hussein had put into Kuwait. The airplane then flew from, after that, flew in all other engagements that the U.S. Air Force, the U.S. military was involved in, flew tens of thousands of sorties. Had a fantastic in-commission rate. Go back to the time when I said I went to Korea with the airplane. Only took 8 airplanes. The exercise people thought it was bringing 18. We were cut back by money by the JCS. They were expecting 18 airplanes to fly 3 sorties a day and serve. I got there with 8 airplanes, and my guys flew the airplane 7 times a day each. I only flew it 4 times because I was trying to run it. They flew 56 sorties in 1 day with 8 airplanes. Amazing capability to turn that airplane, and that was full refueling and full simulation of our ammo load. Guys on the ground loved the airplane. The airplane took battle damage very, very well. This is a picture of an anti-aircraft hits on the back end of an airplane, engine hit by sand, and the airplane got back. One of the first A-10 female pilots was a friend of ours, Max Schreck. She was here at the Air Museum. Her picture's on the wall over here, at the Hall of Fame, Kim Campbell. Kim was the one who took that bad hit in the back of the end of the airplane. She wound up losing all hydraulics, and the airplane has a backup mode called manual revision, basically cables, and she got the airplane back on the ground. She got the DFC for that. Kim Campbell, anybody guess what her initials are KC? Anybody guess what her call sign was? Killer chick, whatever. Dilma. Anyway, Kim just retired from the Air Force. She and her husband, also an A-10 pilot, Sue Campbell, are coming to visit Tim's squadron next month to give the boys a few war stories from way back when. The airplane, the A-10, as this any fighter, could not get to do its job anywhere in the world unless it had the most important airplane that tactical aviation has, and that's the tanker. KC-135, KC-10, now the KC-46, I think is the most important airplane that we have in tactical aviation, because if we didn't have it, then this guy couldn't get to do his job. As I said, the guys on the ground loved it. You remember, one of the main questions I get is, well, the Air Force has been trying to get rid of that airplane. Well, they've been trying to get rid of it for a long time. They haven't succeeded. Most recent Defense Appropriations Bill that was passed this week said, don't you dare get rid of those A-10s. I want to show you a little clip of why. This is John McCain.
air support. In the immediate future would be the other aircraft such as F-16, F-15, and so forth that are capable of showing forth. Tell me you need to show forth here. F-15E, F-16, B-1 bombers, some of our unmanned.
B-1 bomber will now be used for close air support.
So it is my belief that the B-1 bomber has done some close air support in Afghanistan. So we would cover it with existing aircraft, and of course down the line.
That's a remarkable statement. That doesn't comport with any experience I've ever had, but nor anyone I know has ever had. See, this is an example. You're throwing in the B-1 bomber as a close air support weapon to replace the A-10. This is the reason why there's such incredible skepticism here in the Congress. And believe me, we won't. Under the present environment, I can't speak for the committee. I can only speak for myself and several others. You will not pursue the elimination of the finest close air support weapon system in the world with answers like that. So I hope you will come up with something that is credible to those of us who have been engaged in this business for a long, long time.
Senator, may I offer some additional Sure. So the B-1 has been executing close air support missions in Afghanistan for some time, for a number of years.
And it has been able to perform a very extremely limited number of missions of close air support. General, please don't insult my intelligence.
Sir, may
They put him down over and over. Unfortunately. By the way, that Secretary of the Air Force, W.D., used to be an intern at mine in my office in the White House just before I retired from the Air Force. She had a rough time with John McCain, bless his soul. It got away, the gun. That's the whole reason that we're here. It's the reason that this guy is here. They got away and killed armor. The A-10 is going to be around for a long time. They re-winged the airplane. They've upgraded the avionics, put a lot of fancy stuff in it. Even gave Tim an autopilot. So when he flies across the ocean, he's got time to use the relief tube. And, excuse me. I'm going to turn the mic over to Tim here in a second. We're not going to listen to a real current operator give us a couple of his impressions about current flying, and then we're going to go to questions and answers. And we've got, according to my watch, we got 32 and a half minutes left. Tim.
All right. So howdy. I'm Tim Spring Mitchell. I'm not going to tell you why my name's Spring. It just is a long night in Vegas, so just let it leave it at that. I grew up in Texas. I'm a Texas boy. Now I've lived in Tucson for the last 10 years. I've been all over the country. I learned to fly the A-10 in Barksdale in January of 2005, flying with the 47th Fighter Squadron. Went from Barksdale, was at Pope Air Force Base in North Carolina. Went from there to Moody Air Force Base in Georgia, to Davis-Monthan Air Force Base to teach in the schoolhouse, and then spent about 3 years living in Korea. A couple combat deployments in Afghanistan, as he mentioned before. So I've kind of been a little all over, at least all over for what the A-10 fleet looks like. So a couple things that Bob mentioned about, he is correct. The A-10 itself is the premier close air support aircraft. It's gone up exponentially since even from the very beginning due to works of thousands and thousands of people to upgrade it to the A-10C, to add various systems to allow us to be more efficient. And that's the best way I can say it. We are a very, very efficient platform to bring hate and destruction and munitions for protecting our nation. So, what Bob said about the gun. Well, why do we have the gun? We have the gun, we have 11 hard points on it. We carry the same load that a B-25 did on the missions to Berlin on one aircraft. So we can carry a lot of ammo. We have 11 hard points. In Afghanistan, we would load them up. We drop a little bit, not very much. In Syria, by the way, a lot of the guys that I'm a commander of right now, they would clean off their aircraft every single mission. From at 11 hard points, they take off without gas. You can take off with more weight than you can carry fuel, so they go tank, refuel, and then clean off their munitions because they have a lot of work to do. About the gun itself. So the aircraft, the design of the aircraft was built to be able to fly over, identify a target, and then have the pilot still be able to keep line of sight, to be able to turn back around and engage. That is what the real decision for the wing was. Or that's the design principle that led to the large version of our wing. We're slow. We're only 300 knots-ish. But there's a reason, because our turn radius is 2,000 feet. So we can see something, spin back around, and actually do something about it. The most efficient way to do something about it is forward firing munitions, so the gun. Let's increase the size of the bullet so that we can have enough kinetic energy and potential to start taking out armor with the gun. So that's why I turned it to 30 millimeter. That was that design choice. So pretty interesting decisions on it. For Afghanistan, we had one mission that this really, actually two, that this really stood out to me about that. I was in the north side of the Coast Bowl, kind of near the Pakistani border. We were working with our special forces, Green Berets, who were working with Afghanistan special forces. Bravest dudes I've ever met. God bless them. They did some really, really good work, and they did some really, really good fights. But we were stuck underneath the weather. We were in the cloud tops were about the edge of the mountains. There were troops in contact. They didn't have any real ability to mark. But what they did have a guy is they called him RPG Willie. So they had one of their Afghanistan troops sit with an RPG, and he would fire an RPG at the cave that they needed us to shoot so they could do an assault. So the only way to do that is a little RPG is a little bitty, like, bottle rocket. Little bitty engine on the back of that. So what we had to do is fly out of the valley and go, okay, ready, whatever, shoot. And he would shoot, and we could see the rocket with my eyeballs, the rocket on the back of the RPG hit, and see the little puff of smoke where it hit the cave face for us to shoot. Then we did exactly the principle. I was able to spin right back around and actually employ right there to support the assault. So other aircraft would have the ability to do that. You can't fly underneath the weather and see things and do the tight turn radius. At night, we did the exact same thing underneath the cloud deck again, working with British Special Forces down near Kandahar, dropping bombs this time, but one of us was able to work underneath the weather. But it wasn't high enough to drop any bombs. So the other guy underneath the weather, talking to the guys on the ground, troops in contact inside of about 400 meters, friendly forces taking heavy machine gun fire. But because we have eyeballs, we can stay underneath the weather in the dark with our night vision goggles, and you can see the target using the upgraded technology. See the target with our targeting pod, get the coordinates, send it up to the next jet, and the other guy, 20,000 feet in the clouds, and be able to drop a bomb that's on something you've never seen. So, improvements in technology. The big thing about the A-10, one of the last things I want to say is, really, the A-10 itself, yes, it is the greatest cast platform ever. But I think the crews are actually what is the most important thing. It's the man in the cockpit. And that's something that is very special about the A-10 training. I'm a 47 fighter squadron instructor, pilot. I'm the commander of all our instructors. And our job is teaching the brand new guys. The guys that lead pilot training, come to us. They've never flown an A-10 before. We take them from the very beginning of here's how to start the airplane, all the way to here's how to actually perform in high threat close air support. This training and the people are the number one thing. The things that will be lost with the loss of the community is my biggest fear. So the A-10, yes, needs to be around. The A-10, my non-fighter squadron commander, my own personal opinion, not the opinion of the Air Force, needs a replacement, but that's just me. But it needs the people, it needs to have that core of experts, the core of expertise, the guys that really want to be there for the guys on the ground, be the grunts of the sky, if you've heard the term. That's my war story. I got a couple more, but we got time for questions.
How low can you fly and still be effective?
How long?
How low can the A-10 go and still be effective?
We train at 100 feet. And so that's, I'm qualified down to 100 feet, and that is a training restriction. In wartime, you can go lower. but we train to 100 feet, 100 foot ingress to egress.
That's a real good question, because way back when I was training the squadron guys of mine back in 78 and 79, we actually started them out initially basically flying low levels, learning to navigate, because we didn't have, you have to go navigate by a map. You have a map on your lap. 500 feet, we stepped them down, 500, 300, then down to 100 feet. And I eventually got qualified at 100 feet. We didn't knock over many water towers in South Carolina, but we came close a few times.
Tim, talk us through a day at the range. How often do you get a chance to shoot the gun in training and in state proficient?
Okay. So right now, for my students, every time they go to the range, they shoot. My students are flying from 2 to 3 times a week. They're typically shooting between 200 and 360 rounds apiece. And a round is around $20, give or take, so they get to shoot some. So they're shooting a lot. For me, myself, I fly between typically 7 to 9 times a month. And I'm shooting on most. It really kind of depends on the cycle. Any day we're going to the range, we shoot. And our tactical ranges are just south of Olive, Arizona, or south of Gila Bend, Arizona on the interstate right there.
And it's an interesting question about the gun training, because when we first started getting the airplane, the gun was so good. We had a follow line at 1,500 feet. Me and the other 2 squadron commanders and our first wing, we made a decision to move our follow line out to 3,000 feet. We said, you guys, this gun is so good, we want you to stop firing at 3,000, start firing about 6,000. And the reason for that was to avoid the threat, getting in close where you get shot down. But the other thing about that was interesting. I flew the F-100 and this F-104, and I would nominally shoot 35–40%. You know, you scored the targets on the gun, controlled range. With the A-10, with a 3,000 foot follow line, I never shot less than 80%. Wherever you put that pipper with that muzzle velocity, the bullet got there. Question?
Just wondering how many airplanes we have left.
Right now we have 283. So, but not all the other issue that we have, the wings. It is an aging aircraft. We have 218 jets that have been re-winged, so those extend the life of those aircraft all the way to the 2030s. The last were still, they had a budget cut a few years ago because they were getting rid of the A-10. And with that, they stopped that contract, and so now it's a question of whether or not Congress is going to fund the last set or make a decision on that. So right now, there's 283 that are actually out there.
Yeah, the last bill, they tried to cut out 44 airplanes, and Congress said no way. Just like John McCain did a few years ago when he said, don't try to confuse me with any other information and try to replace the world's best close air support airplane.
I have kind of a 2-part question. The first is operationally, what percentage of the missions would you say is daytime and what are nighttime? And the second part about that is, what about that muzzle flash off that cannon in the front? What does that do to the night vision goggles?
That was a great question. So operationally, it really depends, but typically half and half. So definitely in Afghanistan, it was like a waterfall type, where we always have 24-hour coverage across the day. So there would almost always be somebody airborne, and it would be depending on what's going on. If you would concentrate where there are more people airborne at a certain time, if you need to concentrate or not, that just really depended on the ATO. So my last time in Afghanistan, I flew for 6 months at night. I was a night guy, and I lived the night. So I got really tired of dinner for breakfast. But as for the muzzle flash at night, you've seen some of the pictures of the gun firing with some of the HUD video if you look at see it on YouTube. With the night vision goggles, pretty much it's like just turning on a light bulb in the face. It's not bad, it's not distracting, but you lose the symbology in the HUD. So when you shoot, you turn the gun on and you shoot, you refine your aim point, and then you turn the gun on and I count. Because you can't see any of the C-SPAR cues at night like you can in the day. So I count 1 potato, 2 potato, turn the gun on, and then I turn the gun off. and then I start my maneuver to safe escape so I don't hit the ground.
A lot of people ask another question related to that gun and gun flag. Even though that came from a Cobra pilot, an Army guy, we'll take it as a real question. That was Vietnam Cobra Huey pilot. Anyway, the gun itself, how much does it slow you down? I don't remember exactly 2 to 4 rounds when you're shooting. It depends on how long the burst was. Tim, you got any feeling?
It's a live sale. It was on Discovery Channel.
Yeah,
it doesn't slow down.
There is one other fun story about the gun, though. In early days of testing, Buzzy here, Buzz Lynch had a test pilot flying for him by the name of Rusty Gideon. And he was testing the gun in a full long burst up at Edwards Air Force Base. And he fired a long blast with the gun. The gun gas came up, flamed out both engines, and he jumped out of the airplane. The only airplane that was lost in test. And Buzzy lost that airplane, but the pilot was still around, so. It was just a fun story. The only guy that shot himself down with an A-10, Rusty Gideon. By the way, the A-10 has shot down a couple of helicopters in Iraq. And I don't know whether you never had any air shows.
Two in Iraq.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yes, as an example, like how in Ukraine, would you need air superiority to be able to engage that problem?
Yes. Yeah, it would have to be a very combined. That's the interesting thing of discussion is we have 11 hard points. We have a lot of capability, and we have to work as a team. But if we work as a team, it's been proven at various exercises, various levels, with the F-35, with all of our other assets. Think of the Air Force as a set of golf clubs. We're a really good, we're a good chipping wedge. Not a putter, but not a driver. But if we have everybody else on the team, then yeah, it could be successful. It would be difficult. Is the best way to say it.
How did the A-10 get its name? Warthog.
It's ugly. It is ugly. Yep. It's named Thunderbolt 2, but she's ugly, so she's affectionately known as the Warthog. And she likes getting in the dirt, or being in the mud, being in the dirt.
Now, Colonel Lilac asked me specifically to put this airplane in here, and I have no idea why. You wouldn't make a mention of that?
I did mention it while you were trying to tune me in, but that's our P-47 World War II Thunderbolt. And the A-10 is not the Warthog. Officially, Tim flies the Thunderbolt II, the son of the P-47. So the P-47 was a workhorse. You remember you see the World War II movies shooting up the locomotives blowing up and all that sort of stuff. This is the airplane that did it. That's the Thunderbolt 1. Our Thunderbolt 2 is out on the ramp.
So, if for any reason you were to lose one engine, either from battle or from cleanout or whatever, how difficult is it to fly with just one remaining engine?
The jet flies extremely well with one remaining engine. I lost, my very first combat sortie, I lost an engine. So, through buffoonery of myself, a stall warning system that was broken. I didn't know it, I was a young gun lieutenant. So my stall sortie warning system was not working, so typically it provides, he mentioned, sidebar, he mentioned that the first aircraft, when you shot the gun, or the first aircraft that shot the gun, tried to shoot 150 rounds, flamed out the engines. Well, they did several things. They changed the propellant of the actual gun makeup of the propellant bullet. They also added, if you look on the leading edge, right under the head of the wing, there's slats. They're not really aircraft slats, or they're not actual slats like in normal motion. What they do is when you're at high angle of attack, they move forward and it puts high pressure air into the engine. So that high angle attack, the burble across the wing doesn't compressor stall the engine. Well, when you shoot the gun, the slats extend. Also, they put the strace on the bottom to divert some of the gun gas away from the engines itself, trying to force it underneath. And then also the igniters fire on the engine whenever you shoot. So that is all those things to prevent the gun gas from going down the engine. So my story, the stall warning system didn't work. Typically there's tones, they beep in your ear, so I'll stop stalling the aircraft, and you kind of fly in tones. Well, I was flying in tones, and I said, why won't this thing turn? This thing's just a pig because it's loaded with all the bombs. First time ever flew in Afghanistan. Well, I didn't know the stall warning system. I put a little bit of yaw in the aircraft, and I had a burble of air come across the canopy, hit my left engine, and compressor stalled the engine, and I was engine out over Afghanistan. So I learned with the full combat load, she'll settle at about 14,500 feet and just fly nice and easy on the other engine's hydraulics, and then she landed just fine.
My question is, what's the thickest armor that the A-10 is able to destroy?
The thickest armor that the A-10 can destroy? Well, pretty much, we're pretty much all known armor right now. Depends on where you shoot it, right? It depends on where you shoot it, depends on the angle. I can't shoot a main metal tank in the front because the armor's really, really thick. But where am I going to shoot it? I'm going to shoot it in the side, or I'm going to shoot it from behind where the armor's thin, and then you got all the engine compartment and everything right there. All that armor is typically thinner because they have to cool the engine. So that's what I'm going to aim at. Does that make sense? So even if I don't penetrate the crew compartment, I will definitely penetrate enough to cause a mobility kill and make it stop working as effectively. But I'm probably going to shoot a Maverick missile at it and really just blow it up.
As far as you know, do the Russians have a comparable aircraft? And if so, are they using it? Is that present a problem for you?
Yes, they have the Su-25. If you look, they were discussing the Y-9 and the Y-10. That was the two competing aircraft that they had in 1972 for the fly-off. The Russian Su-25 looks a lot like the Y-9. It's a lot faster, about 500 knots. Carry, not as much. But the one thing that's, again, a design choice about the A-10, they have a blowtorch surrounded by gas. That's all the aircraft here. They have the long engine that's really hot, and there's fuel tanks all around it. So that's kind of a very interesting design choice for stuff that's going to be shot at. The Su-25 is the same way. They picked the prettier one to copy, in my opinion. The A-10 is special because if you look, all the engines, all the fire and engines are out on the wings. They're out on pylons away from the actual aircraft. The fuel itself is in self-sealing tanks in the fuselage and in the wings, far, far away from everything that's actually burning. So that definitely increases our survivability.
Now, the Su-25, nicknamed the Frogfoot, is flying in Ukraine. I don't know how many they've got, Tim, I don't know if you know, but they're flying them, but probably not too effectively in my personal estimation, because the Russians have a lot of air defense. They somewhat have a version of air superiority as well, but the air defense, the S-400, SS-21 air defense system is really powerful. And if the Su-25 guys aren't very careful, they're going to get their butt shut down. So I don't know the effectiveness of it. I don't know if you have anything else you can share with us on that, Tim.
No, I'll just keep my opinion.
He's active. I'm retired. I can say anything I want. He's got to be careful. But yeah, the Su-25 Frogfoot. By the way, take a look at Warbird Wednesday. Fred and Greg did a great job in depicting that. So the latest Warbird Wednesday talks quite a bit about the Su-25.
Yes, sir.
How many A-10s are currently based in Europe right now?
Right now, we shut down Spangdahl. There are no A-10s right now in Europe that I know of at the moment.
The people that ask questions never sit together.
That was a long way apart. We got a few more minutes. We're in good shape.
Gross weight and empty weight of the aircraft, please.
Gross taxi weight, 52,000. Empty weight, normal stores around 30,100. That's, excuse me, 28,600 is the heaviest jet at Davis Montgomery.
If you notice the airplane, the gun is lined up center line. That's what makes it so effective. It's the bullets are going where you're going. The nose wheel is actually offset to accommodate part of the gun mechanism that's in the airplane.
You returned to the airfield after having run a fighting mission in rock conditions, rain, sleet, snow, mud, all this. How long turning the plane around with fuel reprovision? We are set to go. What's turnaround time?
Turnaround time typically, it also really depends. They have it down where we don't even shut down. We can land, we can do a hot refueling. So we hot refuel, hot rearm with the cockpit with the pilot in the seat, and we can get back in the air within an hour. It just really depends on the situation. But yeah.
Yep, and the ammunition feeder, the thing that feeds all that, those 30mm shells into the belt is a thing called a dragon. It's a piece of work all by itself. I showed a little bit of it in one of the videos I showed, but it's quite a mechanism, but it's really fast, and they can do that while they're refueling too, so.
Now one of the one of the many capabilities of the A-10 campering is more austere environments. We have the ability to land on dirt. We can land on dirt runways, lake beds, highways, places that other aircraft can't. Because if you see, as an example, see how close using their one as an example, see how close the intake is to the ground. Well, that means that you have to have all pieces of gravel, pieces of asphalt, everything nice and clean and pristine. That way they don't get sucked up into the aircraft and destroy the compressor. The A-10 itself, the engines are so high away, the way the main gear, they're protected by the wing and everything, so dirt and things just get slung into the engine. So we can operate in places that have been damaged, or are austere. So we'll land a C-130 or a helicopter, offload gas, offload bombs, and be able to take off on the road somewhere. So there's a definite capability that nobody else has except for us.
Well, I was in Korea. I actually landed on a highway in Korea. The Koreans use it for a emergency field, so we did it as a demonstration. And by the way, when I was in Korea, I told there was a 3-star general by the name of Jack Vesey and a 2-star general Air Force by the name of Charlie Gabriel. They became chairman, became head of the Air Force. When I got there, they asked me, what do you think of the A-10 in Korea? I said, the A-10 in Korea is great, but the A-10 being at Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, with a mission in Korea sucks. 1 year later, they put the A-10s permanently in Korea. So I also recommended that we were faster than the tactical air control system that ordered us back into the air to go hit a target. The airplane has all sorts of radios. You communicate with the guy on the ground, you got VHF, you got UHF, you can be your own tactical air control system in that airplane. That's why we were able to fly 7 sorties a day per airplane back then.
Not a fighter, only 2 helicopters.
But let me tell you, if you're flying an F-15 or an F-16 or an F-22, you wouldn't want to have both double ugly pointing at nose at you with these bullets. We carried A-9s, by the way, and you carried A-9s on your combat.
In a visual fight, what's the caveat? If a F-16 pilot, F-15 pilot has never fought an A-10 before, the odds are really good that I'm gonna get them the first time. Once they learn how to fight me, it is what it is. But they don't expect the 2,000-foot turn radius. Their radius is the same as mine, but the F-16 pilot's pulling 9 Gs and hurting, and I'm drinking my water watching him work it. Yes, sir.
Hi, first I want to thank you for coming. I took some selfies for some really jealous friends, couldn't make it.
Happy to.
You mentioned, I know that planes are getting new wings to extend the service life. What about the gun? Does that need, or any plans to both your barrels and upgrade or extend the life of the gun?
Well, the gun itself it's one piece at a time. We have a supply system to replace it. The barrels, I'm pulling these numbers. The barrels themselves between 15 to 25,000 rounds, depending on how the lifetime of them. So there's 7 barrels, they're all harmonized together, so they come as a pack. If we shoot the gun more, it's called a combat schedule. If you shoot the gun more than 100 rounds every 2 minutes, you're put on a combat schedule, then they have to replace them faster, and then do more inspections on them. But as for the gun itself, we have supply lines to replace. Those parts are pretty cheap.
It's the barrel. This is a cut down barrel, but it's the barrel light that is the limiting factor.
Yes, sir.
I don't know if you're comfortable answering, but what's the scariest moment you've ever had?
The question from the front was, what is the scariest moment I ever had? Honestly, it was whenever I lost my engine. All right, we have 2 minutes. All right, listen, I'll be fast on this horse for us. The closest I've come to dying is actually on a mission. And it was from pure buffoonery, and all the pilots in the room can go, oh wow, that sucks. So, Bagram at the time. I took off at first mission, nighttime supporting special forces. Took off, woke up at 2 a.m., breakfast at 3, after jet at 4, and we're going to take off well before sunrise. Driving through HESCO barriers, it's dark, I have no idea where I'm at. I don't even know which way north is at this point. We take off going south down the valley. We support a couple missions. We hit the tanker a couple times. But then we're having a lull. Sunrise is happening, it's cold, there's a lull in it. So what we're going to do is, my flight lead says, we haven't flown in over a month, so let's go do some practice. So we're going to do some practice attacks. And we did, and that's where I snuffed my engine out. Well, the rest of the story is, I'm flying out, we're about 100 miles south of Bagram Airfield. If you ever look at a map, it's in a big bowl, huge mountains. Like this mountain here is about the size of it, but it's close to the runway, and it's wrapped all the way around the valley from Bagram. 100 miles from the field, my engine's out, I'm aimed right at the airfield, down final, so I have a 100-mile final to fly. The left system is out, so I have to alternate extend my gear. So that means I pull the handle, the gear drop, and it's locked down, I can't raise it. It's about 5,600 feet, so I have a density altitude problem at this point. So we're flying down, the sun is rising, and there's a huge shadow just covering the base. And so I'm looking through, I'm looking around, I'm trying to see the base. Okay, there, I see that little gray spot, that's it. 2 days prior, they briefed us and said, all right, we're doing construction on the runway. We're building a brand new runway on the side, but we're still landing on the old Russian. It's rough, and if you look outside and if the runway looks bad, don't land on it. All right, I remember that. So I'm looking outside and I see some lines, and I go, okay, there's runway. That runway doesn't, okay, that runway looks good, I'm gonna land on it. So I'm flying, I'm drop my gear, I'm about a mile final, about 300 feet from the ground, and I'm looking and I peek around, I go, there's people on that runway. And I look again, and I go, there's a lot of people on that runway. They're doing construction. I'm lined up on the wrong runway because it's under construction. Well, I'm engine out. I didn't jettison my stores because we didn't need to because it was a 100-mile final. So now I'm in a position, if I push the button, I'm going to release pushing the button on there means I release all the bombs off so that I can actually climb because I have 10,000 pounds of munitions in here. I press the button, all those bombs are going to hit all those people that are doing the construction. So, okay, I can't do that. All right. So I'm going to go around, and I think, to this day, I think the only thing that saved my life is a glider experience. I've got a lot of time in gliders, and I was able to watch the ball and keep the yaw center just enough. Max power in the engine, the jet's going, I'm able to arrest my descent just enough to move about 150, 200 yards over, and then right main, left main, boom. And I landed. So that's a story of me being dumb, almost dying, and then they had to peel me out of the aircraft.
Okay, good story. We got a minute and 45 seconds left, and I'm going to let all you people leave. We're going to do one more question, but you're not going to leave until you give me back my bullets. Who's got them? You got them? Where's the bullets? You got the bullets? I got 3 bullets. You're not going to get out. There they are. Okay, we'll get them. Go ahead and answer the question.
When the bullets are traveling to the gun, do they ever jam? Never mind.
They do. They can. The GE galley, marvel of engineering. The amount of kinetic energy that goes through that guy is extremely impressive. And we got 1,140 pounds of bullets, about 4,000 pounds of ammo. So you have 4,000 pounds that are moving extremely fast on these little tracks right here. So this is part of the gun elements. This actually holds it on a belt. So this is a belt part that holds it. And if one of these gets kinked or something else happened, yeah, it can cause a big chocolate mess. I've had the belt spray, it just sprays bullets all over the inside. The biggest risk is if it does get breached, like the side of the case gets breached and a spark happens, then it can go off low order and cause the big compression. And the last 2 guys I've had the canopy blow off, they land geared up. Well, both of them rifle were students. That's what happens. So yes, when it goes off, it is quite dramatic. And that's also the other reason that it's nice to have a titanium bathtub, because all that stuff is going on right underneath my seat.
Thank you, we're 20 seconds early. Thank you.